I've started recording actually, so recording is on. So if you have any questions, feel free to use the chat box or use the Q&A or raise your hand if you want to talk and say hello to us. But otherwise, I will hand over and introduce you to Adrian Powell from Active Workplace Solutions, who is one of our partners in the portal, and they deal with all sorts of things, as you can see at the bottom here with the wonderful icons, from designing and buildings to doing office fit outs and furniture, moves, and then they also do FM maintenance and servicing. They have a help desk and storage facilities and all sorts as well. And today Adrian's going to talk about what the workplace will look like post COVID-19, a much anticipated topic, let's say. And I know a number of you on the webinar this morning are keen to find out more about this. So do ask questions, make it as interactive and engaging as you want. It's to help you. So yeah, feel free to chat away. And I'll hand over to you, Adrian.
Okay, presumably everyone can be heard okay. Good stuff. Hello, good morning. Just to set the scene to start off with, I am working from home, as most of us are. And so I do apologise in advance if someone rings the doorbell, the home phone goes, the dog barks, or my son just wanders in aimlessly. So I have tried to preempt and make sure these things don't happen, but who knows what Amazon might deliver in the next hour. But yes, welcome. Just a quick introduction to myself and our business. As Hannah said, I'm Adrian. I'm a co-owner and director of Active Workplace Solutions. We've been trading for around about 20 years. Although I joined the business as a shareholder in 2007, we're based just outside of Reading and cover pretty much nationwide, but predominantly in the home counties and into London with our services. As Hannah mentioned in the introduction, essentially what we do is we design, build, furnish, move, manage and maintain workplaces. So if nobody ever goes back to the workplace, as some people think will happen, then yeah, hopefully people will go back to the office at some point. Clients who we work for a vast array of clients, from SMEs all the way through to some large corporates, for example, Virgin Media, Mercedes-Benz, Sony, Channel 4, people like that. So yeah, that's us. That's just a short introduction to us. So over the last few years, I've done a number of presentations to SMEs about how to transform their profitability by transforming their workplace. I felt that I was quite passionate about SMEs trying to improve their working environments. I thought they thought that a fantastic workplace was often beholden to the global brands, and we're all, you know, I run an SME myself. We're all fighting for the best people. We all want to attract and retain the best talent. And I saw a little while back a report that said that 77% of CEOs, this was one of their major worries pre-COVID, that accessing and retaining talent was a big threat to the business. You know, attracting talent isn't easy, and when you do lose it, it gets very expensive. So on this slide, there's a couple of pictures depicting workplaces around about 100 years apart. This was probably the one on the left is a typical sort of mid 2000s ish to 2000 or 2010, 2000, that sort of period. A lot of hot desking, and then on the right is a very similar picture, I think. If you took away the sewing machines and replaced them with PCs, and you sort of took away the tables and made it banks of desks, the workplace hadn't really changed very much. But certainly in the last 10 years, it has. I think if you're going back to the late 80s, when we had a recession, a lot of businesses cut back on space and cut back on their property costs. property costs in any business are often the second largest expense to people. We saw cellular offices go, more open plan space being made available. In the late 90s, early 2000s, this was often in cubicles, which have since sort of largely disappeared from the landscape in the UK, although they're still reasonably popular in the States. IBM in the mid-90s started hot desking, where you booked a desk like a hotel room, and BT started to promote home working in the 1990s. We then had another recession in around 2010, and businesses again looked at their property costs, and the square footage that people were allowing per person dropped from 225 square feet per person to around about 176 on average. But now we work on around about 100 square foot. So it shows you that we're definitely trying to pack people in. In 2014, there was a study of around about 10,500 workers in Europe, North America, and Asia. And it found that about 85% of employees were dissatisfied with their open plan office environments. The main reason for that was that people were struggling to concentrate and losing a lot of time each day due to distractions. And many people felt they had to leave their workplace to concentrate and complete their work. This was down to, say, lack of concentrating space, private space. And hot deskings were getting very poor press as well, with 90% of people feeling that hot desking led to environments with higher stress levels and less productivity. We all know that if people are happy at work, then productivity tends to increase, and if you're unhappy, then the opposite happens. But I think in the last 10 years, there's certainly been a revolution with regards to workplace design. Many companies now have seen the benefits, and this is pre-COVID, have seen the benefits of flexible, agile, activity-based. There's lots of buzzwords around working. Companies want to attract people still, the best people, and they want to retain the best people. They want to promote a healthy lifestyle, less sedentary work practices, and we're seeing a lot of buildings where there's much more light and airy spaces, and there's been a huge emphasis on biophilic design as well, with planting and bringing the outside in. So there's some examples of types of workplaces that have been created more recently, and companies, even pre-COVID, many companies were promoting a much more flexible environment and encouraging home working, almost to the fact where we were talking to a lot of companies over the last couple of years where they wanted to build a workplace to encourage people back into the office. They were providing freedom and flexibility for people to work where they wanted, sort of when they wanted, but there were certain things that weren't happening around collaboration, lack of creativity, and difficulty in communication. So whilst we were building workplaces where perhaps people didn't necessarily share desks, you were creating spaces that definitely aided collaboration and spurred creativity. So on these areas, you can see there's sort of team tables, there's acoustic pods, informal meeting spaces, and often different heights of furniture as well to give interest and encourage movement and well-being around the space. The workstations would often be placed into home zones or neighbourhoods with different parts of the business, perhaps. And then there'll be another variety of settings to support quiet and concentrated work. And I often use an analogy around your home, really, that at home you have different rooms that often support different tasks, whether your bedroom for sleeping, or your kitchen for preparing food, or your lounge for relaxing. the workplace was definitely being designed around those, tasks, so that you would move around the space, less sedentary, and use the whole space for different tasks. So again, pre-COVID, this slide is because this was one of the most common questions or requests we used to receive. We want a Google Workplace. But not everybody wants a slide, not everybody wants a tree house. And definitely there isn't a one-size-fits-all workplace. Really, when designing a workplace, there's a lot of considerations, but values and culture is one of them. What fits with a Google or a media or tech business won't necessarily fit with a financial, institutional, legal practice. So we really need to understand the needs of your employees. There's a couple of surveys come out that 44% of employees state that learning from others was an important work activity. And 79% of employees would rank tea, coffee and refreshment facilities as an important workplace feature. And 70% of employees are not satisfied with their workplace noise levels. So going out to your employers is definitely, is key to create a space that works for you. We also need to take into account the changing nature of work. Because over the last 10 years, there's definitely been an increase in self-employed people in the workplace. There's also been a huge increase in freelancers in the same time period. And we also have, within the UK, I think it's about 3 million people working within the gig economy. So work has definitely changed. So we get to March, April, and the great home working experiment begins. I believe this was enforced because of the pandemic, and so companies have had to shift their behaviour. One thing we've seen over the last 6 months is the death. It's definitely been the death of the desktop PC. I don't think any business will be buying desktop PCs anymore. People will just buy laptops. We've had a couple of examples for our clients. For instance, Virgin Media, when we got to into April, everybody was working at home, but their call centres were still operational. They tried to physically distance their call centre employees in their buildings, and decided straight away that it was going to be that wasn't going to be achievable, and they rolled out all new laptops. And for Nationwide Building Society, another one of our clients, we've currently been clearing thousands of desktop PCs away to be recycled, because they've rolled out completely laptops so that they can support flexible work. I think we've seen companies in this period who thought that they couldn't work remotely or flexibly have found now their arms have been twisted that they can. I think they found out they can trust their people, and they've now got the technology in place to support the work. Another example of one of our clients, Kerry Foods, we were designing a workplace for them prior to COVID, so the early part of this year, and that has been redesigned and delivered through the lockdown period, and the design they've ended with didn't look like the design they started with in January and February, because they suddenly realised they were very traditional in their way that they wanted to work, and they have changed completely in 6 months. So we've definitely seen a shift in those 6 months from some traditional businesses, which probably would have taken 10 years perhaps for them to have done that normally. So with home working, So many of us are working from home. There's the good and the bad. The bad, I suppose, is social isolation, fewer work friends, lack of collaboration. Perhaps if you group brainstorm or you require colleague support when you're at work, then you're not getting that. Distractions, as we say, we've all been on Zoom calls or Teams calls where there's the kids in the background or the pets jumping across the desk, and many of us struggle to walk past the fridge. So it's a bit of a distraction, and also furniture and IT issues. People are sitting on the edge of their beds, or they are sitting at a kitchen table, haven't got the correct furniture. Some companies haven't been supporting those people in terms of getting the correct furniture. And then we've had the broadband and IT issues where many of us have felt like throwing our laptop at someone at some point. And then you've got the good things, flexible working hours, which actually could be bad as well, because I'm like many others, I assume, where it is very difficult sometimes to separate the home working from your normal life. I'm quite lucky; I can shut my door on it because I have an office. So I can do that. Others can't. So that's. But also, there's no commute. You can save money on your travel. Perhaps you're not popping out to get the coffees that you did when you were going to the office. Home comforts. We can all work in a pair of shorts or a t-shirt. Not have to get dressed up to go to work. And we don't have to suffer office politics. However, the home working experiment, I do think, has been helped that we are living a little bit off the past at the moment. I think the satisfaction and productivity that we've experienced is often, or has been built from the product of the social interactions that we may have had, the coffee machine conversations, the meetings, etc., that we've had prior to this crisis. So we need to consider with home working about corporate culture, and will that and our communities erode over a period of time? Will planned and unplanned moments of collaboration become impaired? Will there be less mentorship for young people coming into the business, starting their careers? How will they cope? And has working from home only succeeded because we're all viewing it as a temporary thing and not permanent? So over this period of time, we've been also helping businesses create a safe place for people to return to the office. Now, because before a vaccine is available, the office probably won't be as it was. Well, we know it won't be as it was. People aren't going to come back to the office and find the same buzz that perhaps they left in January and February. Not so when you're sitting 2 meters apart from people, whatever. Many companies are promoting mask on the move at the moment. So when you're moving around the space, you must mask up. And we've designed spaces with walkways, one-way systems, lay-bys, and safe places for people to wait for lifts, etc. But to be honest, we've not seen a lot of that being. People have worked out their occupancy, but we haven't seen a lot of people adopt this. They've not sort of taken a lot of furniture away. Some people have taped off desks and areas and taken chairs out of meeting rooms, but that's really about it. There's a huge amount of uncertainty at the moment about what people will come back to in the long term, and why spend the money at the moment on short-term fix when people are predominantly working okay at home. Also, we've had to struggle with different guidelines. The British Council of Offices guidelines are different to the World Health Organisation's guidelines, which are difficult to the UK government's guidelines. So, and depending on whose you want to sit with, the occupancy can change. So, as a result, even after reopening the offices, the office is going to continue to evolve. Showing a picture of a sneeze screen there. They were the bane of our life for about 3 months until all the acrylic ran out. So the future workplace. Well, I don't think anybody knows at the moment. I think people are surmising, but nobody's been through a pandemic like this. There's continuing levels of uncertainty at the moment due to, whether there might be another lockdown, local lockdowns, another surge in the virus. So a lot of companies are keeping the majority of their staff at home. One client we're working with actually approved the design, as I said, Kerry, over the COVID period. They were very traditional, but they had 160 workstations. The original design was still to return with 160 workstations for their people to return to. But over the period of the lockdown, we took that back to 80 workstations. They went out we surveyed all the staff, all the employees, on a number of different points around working from home and working in the office. So the number of desks were greatly reduced. The number of collaborative spaces was increased. Also, areas around the washrooms and making things more COVID safe with all the sensors, sensors for taps and toilet flushes and bits like that. So we've had, the media throwing a blanket over everyone and telling us that the office is dead and everyone's now going to work from home. I saw a headline the other week that Schroders said that staff will not return to the office, but actually when you read the report, they actually said that staff don't have to return if they can continue to work productively at home, but the office is open for those who can't. The reality is that both sides of the debate are probably right, and there will be a more hybrid style of working, which will be adopted by many. The office will become a destination, I think, and there must be a reason for you to go. We're also seeing a lot of talk, and we're hearing a lot around people's city centre HQs, where they're having, they're looking at reducing the size of their headquarters buildings in the city, but then having a portfolio of properties, so home working, suburban hubs, co-working spaces. So there is likely to be a shift by companies in that respect. However, as I said before, every organisation and culture is different. So circumstances, and so is actually every individual employee's circumstances are different. So these all need to be taken into account. I've got people in my business that, some have experienced different emotions and levels of happiness or unhappiness at different times. So I've got some people who want to come back to the space, the workplace, because they need to for their well-being. Others are quite happy to work at home. We're also finding that, many forms of virtual collaboration are working well, others are not. Some people are actually struggling to get mentorship, and so they're missing out. And I've seen quite a few networking events that I've used to attend, which initially at the start of the pandemic on Zoom and Teams, which were very popular, and these are starting to wane with people wanting to meet physically again. So we get back to the Google slide, which I had for pre-COVID-19, which I've put back in for post-COVID-19, because whilst there's been a shift by different organisations in perhaps how they feel the office will be, or how they will view real estate in the future, there is still no one-size-fits-all solution. Pre-COVID, we didn't design the same build, we didn't design the same office for every single client, and post-COVID, we won't either. Everything is different for every organisation. It will be based on what talent is needed, which roles are more important, how much collaboration is necessary, where offices are located. Even within an organisation, the answer could look different across the geographies, businesses, and functions. So the exercise of determining what will be needed in the future will be a real team sport across real estate, human resources, technology, and the whole business. This is going to be a huge change management exercise, because permanent change is going to require exceptional change management skills. So we're recommending that organisation now start to take steps to reimagine how their work is done and what the future role of the office will be. But I think one thing is for sure, that going forward there must be a purpose to come into the office in the future. So there's a number of different steps really to finish on. Firstly is to reconstruct how work is done. I think just because you've always worked one way, it doesn't necessarily mean that will now be the way forward. So it'll be a case of identifying the most important processes for each business, the geography and the function, and that will be involving all your employees. For instance, if your company is, project manages something, you could do part of that physically in a all co-located in an office, the initial planning, but then work remotely to execute the plan. Previously, you might have generated ideas by convening a meeting and brainstorming, or on a whiteboard, and then assigning someone to refine the resulting ideas. But now, could you do that digitally instead? I think you need to reflect on your values again and culture, and the interactions, practices, rituals that promote that culture. A company that focuses on developing talent, for example, should ask whether the smaller moments of mentorship that happen in an office can continue spontaneously. Then you need to decide on, is it people to work, or is it work to people? Say in the past couple of years, competition for talent has been fiercer than ever. At the same time, some groups of talent are less willing to relocate to employers' locations than they had been in the past. So you might be able to reconstruct and identify what can be done remotely.
Adrian, sorry to interrupt. We've got a couple of questions, if that's okay, just whilst you're on this slide, because I think they're probably quite pertinent. Jen has asked, do we think more offices will be outside of the cities? They have an office in Birmingham, Sussex and Farringdon, and their Farringdon one's currently open a couple of days a week, but the other two are open all week. So do you think people might be more likely to go to offices outside of the main cities like London?
Yeah, as I said earlier, I think that there will be the term hybrid's been applied to different things. One, in the way we work in terms of flexibly, whether we come into the office as a destination to do a particular type of work, and we might be limited to 2 or 3 days a week. It might be planned, it might be unplanned, depending on your organisation. The other thing we are seeing is there seems to be a greater interest in business parks again. Certainly local to us in Reading, where a lot of people travel into the city from there. So there is an opinion that big headquarter spaces in the city will be, businesses will evaluate that real estate. That real estate they will over a period of time, because don't forget, people have still got leases. So this isn't all going to happen straight away, but where there can be where people don't have to rely on public transport to get to, so they can get there in a car. So there's greater parking parking, greater outcomes is becoming popular. So we are seeing a lot more interest in those sort of spaces, which would then make you think that the businesses may look at a portfolio of space. So there'll be a smaller headquarters space, perhaps in the city, some suburban hubs, perhaps of their own. But that's really around the demographic and the geography of where their people are, or where they want to attract their talent from. And then into that mix comes the co-working space, which we've seen, you know, with the WeWorks of this world over the last few years. So it could be a right portfolio, but I do think, yes, that the headquarters over the next few years of, you know, thousands and thousands of people, and they're spreading the risk as well. Businesses are spreading the risk by doing that as well. So yes.
Okay, thank you. And Jen said thank you. That answers her question, I believe. And then Jane, you've raised your hand, so I'm just going to let you chat if you're still about. If you, it should have let you chat now. Let's see. Sorry, it's not letting me chat. It's do you want to raise it on chat, or do you want us to get you on line so you can talk? We've taken your hand down. If you have a question, Jane, just let us know in the chat. If not, Lynn said she was in St James on Friday in Canary Wharf. We were just talking on chat, Adrian, about how London's looking a lot busier in the last couple of weeks. I was in yesterday, and I go into Liverpool Street, and that was certainly a lot busier, probably contributed towards by the delays on the trains that we had yesterday, but it felt a lot busier than it has done over sort of September and August. And Mayfair, where I was really busy. I couldn't go to lunch. This makes me sound really I don't know what the word is, but
we found that as well, where we've been carrying out projects where some areas of London, parts of the West End and say Mayfair, have been very, very busy. But when you go into the city, you know, it's still been, you know, or going to Canary Wharf, it's still been quite, you know, changing all the time, aren't they? Then we've got, you know, I'm not sure, I heard the R rate in London, I think on the news this morning, wasn't it? It's up at 2.8 something now, and you know, there's every likelihood that, you know, London, if that goes into tier 3 or level 3, then we'll be back where we started almost again. But yeah,
but businesses can still stay open even in tier 3, can't they, and continue to go in. I
think there's a lot more traffic on the roads because people aren't using the public transport. Still got a lot of confidence in the public transport, and we've actually had a lot of clients stipulate that if we're coming to site, our teams cannot use public transport. They've got and people have been refused entry to site if they've been seen coming off the tube. So yeah, it's but yeah, and also, but when you're talking about the head office scenario and those suburban hubs, when say pre-COVID, one of the main things for CEOs was attracting and retaining talent. That's got there's huge opportunity to attract talent that way, because
the talent pool's much wider, isn't it?
Who didn't want to, didn't want to travel into London every day. Now there's huge possibilities if they can travel locally, or work in a local office or work at home. You might be able to attract a far wider range in your search. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I think that's all for questions now and for the moment.
Yeah, I mean, so then really around redesigning the workplace to support the priorities. I think this is a great opportunity, just to, like a lot of us with our businesses, and when through this period, where a lot of businesses have been cutting non-essential costs and that, when they're reevaluating all the time now whether this is actually necessary going forward. And I think the same will be with real estate. I think some people's offices have been designed to support certain priorities. And I think that might have changed during this period. So organisations should workplaces specifically for what they feel will support the need going forward. Yeah, I think that's really ask employees who work at a desk and rarely have to attend group meetings, really, do they need to come into the office? Can they work from home? And if the office space is only needed for those who cannot work from home, oh, well, oh, sorry about that. Yeah, for those who really can't work from home, then let's create the space for them. Just lost my notes. Sorry. Oh. Yeah, actually, with my notes when we looked at resizing the footprint and redesigning, I put here, which was around that last question as well, that we're seeing the movement of large city-based HQs that are reliant on public transport move to smaller HQs, or thinking of going to smaller HQs with suburban hubs with plenty of parking and open spaces. I think also just the technology will play a central role in enabling employers to return to office buildings and to work safely. I think people have moved a lot in technology over the last 6 months and adopted lots of new technologies, and I think this will continue. And then we can resize the footprint creatively. We can reinvent the office around what is now required, and it is not one size fits all. Where space is required, if you want to foster collaboration or productivity, keep the culture and the work experience, that sort of kind of approach will involve questioning where your offices should be located. Will you have them in big cities? Where will you have them to attract the young talent? And you need to keep something in the big cities because you want to attract young talent and create a sense of connection and energy, whilst others will abandon those sort of headquarters and go to more of a suburban campus. But as we said, a portfolio of space solutions seems to be the way that people are looking at the moment. Some own space, perhaps some flexible leases, some flexible space, co-working space for remote working. And lastly, really, now is the time. I think that as employees around the world experiment with bringing their employees back to the offices when we can, well, we all thought we could, and then we'll have to go back home again. This is the time when sort of leadership should act to ensure that the return is both productive and safe. Organisations should also use this moment to break from the inertia of the past, and dispense all those old habits and systems, and together a well-planned return to the office and reinvent themselves, create a better experience for talent, improve that collaborative piece and productivity. Great opportunity to do that and reduce costs. And I think that kind of change will certainly require some transformational thinking, but needs to be grounded in fact. But ultimately, the aim will be what good companies have always wanted, and that is a safe environment where people can enjoy their work, where they can collaborate with their colleagues and achieve the objectives of the company. So yeah, that's me.
Super, thank you so much. Lynn asked a question there about furniture. So when designing and fitting out now, are fabric choices different so that they're more easy to wipe down, for example? I've seen some stuff. I think we added a post on the portal yesterday about some new technology called Eye Protect, I think it is, from memory, which you can put on, door handles, push bars, lift buttons, and all kinds of things like that. But from the furniture and the fit outside, are you seeing more of that?
At the moment, all we're seeing is clients adopting, more stringent cleaning regimes, and also also personal responsibility on their people to to be more stringent in terms of keeping the hands, the hands space. We, to be honest, with regards to furniture procurement at the moment, most furniture companies I've spoken to, organisations are struggling like mad at the moment because they might be selling the odd chair, the chairs for home workers, but apart from that, a lot of companies are sitting on their hands and not doing anything, and not spending any money on non-essential stuff. So if you can keep people at home working productively, they're not encouraging them back into the office. So I haven't seen or had any of our clients talking about that, but certainly they're using different technology for, they say, around door pushes and lifts and using materials that don't or that are safer for sort of touch points.
Yeah, the antimicrobial things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Has anyone else got any questions for Adrian, or got any topics on this topic that they want to raise on the chat and have for discussion? No? Okay, well, hopefully that's been a useful insight. For my 2 pence worth, if it's worth anything, I do see that there's changes coming, but I think it's going to be on the balance of a number of things Adrian mentioned in terms of the appetite of the employee and the employer to have this environment, and where that might sit in terms of being in a hub like London or Birmingham or Manchester, or whether they have, because obviously there's a cost to it, to the ability to have other smaller hubs and shrink their main hub. I don't see every company going that way though. You think about some of the companies from this. I know even some people on this call now, your companies are doing exceptionally well, because the environment that you work in actually thrives when there is a bit of a crisis, because you rely on markets and things. So, I think it's a really interesting time, and my advice is to talk to your boss and your executives and try and understand and stay ahead with them on what they want to do, because as Adrian mentioned, being part of this change is going to be crucial, and you guys as office managers can have an influence and an impact on that. And I think that's where your value runs. Yeah, exactly, Zara, you're running out of desk space. So, I think it's a really interesting time, and I know it's a bit of a nerving time for people in our office management positions as well, but I personally think all this doom and gloom about the end of the office is BS, quite frankly. I think there's going to be changes, but I don't think it's going to happen overnight. This is going to take years of replanning and strategy. People are in leases, people are in agreements that are 6 months, 1 year long, even in some of these serviced office places, and nobody is going to just suddenly reinvent the wheel on this, and we don't know if we really need to yet either, in the sense that we don't know what's going to happen with COVID and the vaccine and all this kind of stuff, but also people more and more over the last couple of months have shown a change and a shift in that actually they don't want to work from home forever, because it's dull, it's not good for our mental health, and it's not good for our learning, nor is it good for the culture and the embedding and that, like the mentorship that Adrian's mentioned. So, I really think it's an interesting time, and I don't think anybody has the wisdom on exactly what's going to happen. But I think the key takeaway from this here, Adrian, I don't know if you agree, is that change management bit, and it is staying ahead or keeping up with what your employers and your executives are planning, and bringing ideas to the table so that you stay and remain at the forefront of these discussions where you can, and that you bring these innovations and these products and these ideas to them, so that you really are an integral part of this process as we continue to go through it.
Yeah, I think also, I mean, some people, their hands might be being forced because they might be coming towards a lease break or something. I've spoken to a couple of companies where they their leases have come to an end, and the landlords, has offered them very good terms to stay on the short, for another couple of years or whatever to see. And they've, and worse, we've seen some people do that. I've seen a couple of companies now that have said, no, that's fine. We'll see out the lease. I've got everybody working at home. We're going to ride this out and see what happens, and then we will make an informed decision on what space we need, where we need it, and you know, it's almost like starting again in terms of what they require. They're not going to have the office that they used to have as sort of hanging around their shoulder. That's what we're going to base it on. They've literally said, no, we're going to almost like start from scratch, and we will reimagine what we need. And so some people are going to be in that position sooner rather than later. So definitely keep close to that, and it's going to be a massive change management piece. But I think the one thing, you know, I've always been very, very keen and wanted to learn more about, you know, is you know, business culture and you know, one thing you don't want to is erode that. And so all those things that make your business and the things you love about your business, whatever you do, you can't let that be eroded. And the other thing, I know you mentioned, you know, some companies do very well, you know, doing very well out of this. But on some of the ones, you know, some of the big ones I've spoken to, you know, Dell are a client of ours, they've done very well out of this. A lot of organisations, you know, they won't spend money unless there's certainty. And, you know, we've seen it at Brexit, you know, as soon as there's, you know, when the general election happened in, you know, at Christmas last year, you know, after there was there looked to be some, you know, some sort of path, you know, some direction of travel from the government, companies started to open their checkbooks and say, right, we're going to do this now, we can do this because we know roughly where we're going to be going. And then COVID. And now we're seeing, even though companies have done very well, they're reluctant to do anything until there is some certainty about, you know, of the path. So I think it's, you know, there's loads of information out there. I just wanted to get over really that, you know, you didn't walk into every workplace before COVID and everybody's was the same, because that's what a workplace is.
Yeah.
And the media get onto some things and they just say, right, we're all going to do this.
Yeah.
All right, okay, we're going to do that. And it's not the case. You know, what works for one doesn't work for the other. And it's very personal and it's very much down to, you know, it's about your business and what works for you. And that's key. And you've got to remember that. Don't just go with the flow that, oh, where everybody's doing this now. Let's, you know, you've got to make sure it's right for you.
Yeah, exactly. Very interesting times indeed, but I think there's opportunity in this. If you stay close to it and you know, where you can get access to these conversations at the top, then I think that's a really good thing to take away. And yeah, you can reach out to Adrian obviously through the portal, or I'll share his slides after this with the YouTube link for anybody that's missed it or wants to have a replay as well.
Be hoping, Hannah, that, you know, when everything does settle down, everybody want to do something to their workplace.
Yes. Do you know, someone was telling me, one of our other furniture partners was telling me the other day that in the midst of sort of lockdown / the coming out, they had so many, you know, hundreds of people reaching out to them for quotes for the desk screens. And like the smallest, and I don't know if you found the same, but the smallest percentage have gone through and sold because they just realised that actually it's a waste of money. And, you know, and I know I've done some of the risk assessments and come to some of the offices of some of the people on the line, and it's not the option that people took because, you know, people aren't ready to come back, and if they are, there's a different way of managing it rather than just throwing money at the solution. So I think
we found exactly the same. We quoted for thousands of acrylic screens, and it was very, you know, at the time I had a lot of my team on furlough. I was it all, and it was a very time consuming getting quotes out for people. A lot of companies were, you know, it was either acrylic screens down the spine of the desk and then returns, and making almost like cubicles. We sold a number of screens to, for reception desks and for counters in restaurants and that, you know. But for desks, we have sold some. But I was on a call, I don't know, in April, May, with on another one of these type of panels, and somebody just popped up, today's seats and these screens, tomorrow's landfill, and to be fair, they're probably right, you know.
Yeah.
Sometimes they had them and they use it because it's a case of, yeah, we can do the science around it and whether it makes any difference, but also it's giving confidence to your people as well, that you're you know that you've done everything you possibly can to make it safe for them when they come in, and if that means putting some screens up that people feel that they feel safer, then so be it. But we quoted a lot, and clearly a lot of people bought them because you couldn't get acrylic for love nor money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the more sort of retail and public sectors, wasn't it? Rather than, I suppose, the back office, business sector.
I was at an event at the weekend, and they had the acrylic screens on the counter where they were selling drinks. And sort of 3 acrylic screens with gaps in between, and every time the person behind the screen or behind the counter wanted to serve a drink, they went to the gap in between the screens to talk to the person on the other side. And you're thinking, what is the point?
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, if there are any other questions to say, you can reach out to Adrian directly if you want to have a chat with him and get some more advice or support. But otherwise, we'll keep doing these things for as long as we can, and sharing people like Adrian's expertise on the topic and on other topics. So keep an eye out on the portal and your emails for those. And hopefully we will run, I'm going to do some surveys and things later in the coming weeks, but hopefully we'll run some smaller events starting from January if anybody's up for it, in person in London, up to a maximum of 30, socially distanced. So drop me a note if you're interested in that, and we will get organising, because it's been too long since I saw you all, and we miss you, and hopefully you miss our events as well. I know Adrian does. So we will see you all very soon. Have a wonderful, what day is it? Thursday, right? Gosh, this week's
flying. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Thanks for your wisdom as always.
Thank you very much, Hannah. And as you say, anybody who needs me, give me a shout.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks so much, Adrian. Thanks everybody for joining. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.